What happens when fear controls an entire nation? When people lose hope, when oppression feels endless, when no one believes things can change anymore. For years, the people of Israel lived in fear. Not for days, not for months, for 20 long years. Their enemies controlled the land. Travel became dangerous. Villages became empty. People hid instead of living. And during one of the darkest periods in Israel's history, a woman named Deborah rose to lead. Not as a queen, not as a warrior, but as a judge, a prophet, and a voice of courage in a fearful nation. Her story would become one of the most powerful stories of leadership and faith in the Bible. After the death of earlier leaders, Israel slowly drifted away from God again. This pattern had happened before. The people would turn away, trouble would come, they would cry out for help, and God would raise a leader. This time, their enemy was King Jabin of Canaan. But the true terror of the land was his military commander, Sisera. Sisera commanded 900 iron chariots. In the ancient world, iron chariots were terrifying, fast, heavy, deadly. Against ordinary foot soldiers, they were almost unstoppable. For 20 years, Sisera oppressed Israel cruelly. People became afraid to travel openly. Roads were abandoned. Villages became silent. The nation lived under fear, and many believed nothing would ever change. Far from the battlefield, under a palm tree in the hill country of Ephraim, sat Deborah. People traveled from different places to seek her wisdom. She listened carefully, settled disputes, gave guidance. But Deborah was not just wise. She was also a prophetess. She listened for the voice of God. And during this fearful time in Israel, God gave Deborah a message. It was time for deliverance. It was time to confront Sisera. And one man would be called to lead the battle. His name was Barak. Deborah sent for Barak. When he arrived, she gave him a direct message from God.
The Lord commands you to go. Do not be afraid, for I will go with you. The victory is assured, but you must act now.
Gather 10,000 men. Lead them to Mount Tabor. God would draw Sisera and his army to the Kishon River and deliver them into Barak's hands. But Barak hesitated. Think about the situation. Sisera had trained soldiers, iron chariots, military power. Israel had fear and uncertainty. Barak looked at Deborah and said, "If you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go." Some people criticize Barak for this moment. But imagine the fear that existed in the land. For 20 years, Sisera seemed unbeatable. Barak knew this battle would require more than weapons. It would require faith. Deborah agreed to go, but she gave Barak a warning. The honor of defeating Sisera would not belong to him. Instead, God would hand Sisera over to a woman. At the time, Barak probably didn't fully understand what that meant. Word spread quickly. Men gathered from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. 10,000 soldiers climbed Mount Tabor. But imagine what many of them felt. Fear, doubt. Some probably questioned if they could really defeat Sisera's powerful army. Meanwhile, Sisera heard about the gathering. Confident in his strength, he mobilized his forces immediately. 900 iron chariots rolled toward the battlefield. The ground shook beneath them. Dust filled the air. To human eyes, Israel seemed hopelessly outmatched. Then the moment came. Deborah looked at Barak and said, "Go. This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands." Barak charged down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men behind him. Then something unexpected happened. The weather changed. Storm clouds gathered. Heavy rain began to fall. The Kishon River overflowed. Mud covered the battlefield. Sisera's iron chariots, his greatest advantage, became trapped in the mud. The very thing that made Sisera powerful suddenly became useless. Confusion spread through the Canaanite army. Israel attacked with courage. Sisera's soldiers began to flee. The impossible was happening. The army that had terrorized Israel for 20 years was collapsing. Sisera realized the battle was lost. He abandoned his chariot and escaped on foot. The mighty commander who once inspired fear across the land was now running for his life. Eventually, he arrived near the tent of a woman named Jael. Jael was the wife of Heber the Kenite. Sisera believed he had found safety there. Jael welcomed him inside peacefully. Sisera was exhausted, terrified. He asked for water. Jael gave him milk instead and covered him with a blanket. Then Sisera made one final request. Stand at the entrance of the tent. If anyone asks if a man is here, say no. Soon, Sisera fell asleep, completely vulnerable. And then, Jael made a decision that would change history. Quietly, she took a tent peg and a hammer. She approached Sisera carefully. Then, while he slept, she drove the tent peg through his temple. Sisera died there in the tent. The feared commander of Canaan was defeated not by an army, but by a woman, just as Deborah had said. Soon afterward, Barak arrived searching for Sisera. Jael walked out to meet him. Come, she said. I will show you the man you are looking for. Barak entered the tent, and there lay Sisera, dead. The oppression that had haunted Israel for 20 years was finally broken. That day, God subdued King Jabin, and the Canaanite oppression weakened until Israel eventually destroyed their enemy completely. After the victory, Deborah and Barak sang a song.
See the dawn of our deliverance. The darkness is gone, the victory.
One of the oldest victory songs recorded in the Bible. It celebrated courage, faith, and the people who willingly stepped forward despite fear. Deborah praised those who answered the call to fight, but she also mentioned tribes who stayed behind in fear and hesitation. The song reminded Israel of something important. Victory came not because Israel was strongest, but because God fought for them. Even nature itself seemed to fight against Sisera. The storm, the flooded river, the trapped chariots, everything turned against the oppressor. Deborah's story stands out for many reasons. She led during a time when leadership was desperately needed. She spoke with wisdom, but she also acted with courage. She did not simply tell others what to do. She went with them. She stood beside them in dangerous moments. And, perhaps most importantly, she believed victory was possible before anyone else did. In a nation paralyzed by fear, Deborah carried hope. The story of Deborah is not only about war. It is about courage, about stepping forward when others hesitate, about faith during dark seasons. Israel had accepted fear as normal. Many people today do the same. Fear can control decisions, delay action, silence purpose. But Deborah reminds us that courage can change history. And courage does not always look loud or aggressive. Sometimes courage looks like speaking truth, standing firm, leading wisely, trusting God when the outcome looks impossible. Deborah also reminds us that leadership is not about titles. It is about influence, about obedience, about helping others rise above fear. For 20 years, Israel lived in fear. Then Deborah rose. A woman sitting beneath a palm tree became the voice that awakened a nation. Barak found courage. The people found hope. Sisera fell, and Israel experienced peace again. Deborah's story reminds us that one courageous person can influence an entire generation. Maybe you're facing something right now that feels overwhelming. A battle, a challenge, a fear that has lasted too long. And maybe the lesson of Deborah's story is this. Fear does not have to decide the future. Sometimes victory begins the moment someone chooses courage.